Bless Yahweh the Blessed One. Blessed is Yahweh the Blessed One for all eternity. The Torah of Yahweh is going to bring you back to being. The witness of Yahweh is trustworthy, making wise and simple. Open my eyes that I might see wonders from your Torah. Amen. Okay, Deuteronomy 7. Okay. When Yahweh your Elohim brings you into the land which you go to possess, he shall also clear away many nations before you. The Hittites, the Girgashites, and the Amorites, and the Kenites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than you. And when Yahweh your Elohim gives them over to you, you shall smite them and put them under the ban completely. Make no covenant with them, and show them no favor. And do not intermarry with them. You do not give your daughter to his son, and you do not take his daughter for your son. For he turns your sons away from following me, to serve other mighty ones. Then the displeasure of Yahweh shall burn against you and promptly destroy you. But this is what you do to them. Break down their altars and smash their pillars, and cut down their asherim, and burn their carved images with fire. For you are a set-apart people to Yahweh your Elohim. Yahweh your Elohim has chosen you to be a people for himself, a treasured possession above all the peoples on the face of the earth. Yahweh did not set his love on you, nor choose you because you were more numerous than the other people, for you were the least of the peoples. But because of Yahweh loving you, and because of him guarding the oath which he swore to your fathers, Yahweh has brought you out with a strong hand, and redeemed you from the house of bondage, from the hand of Pharaoh, sovereign of Mitzrayim. And you shall know that Yahweh your Elohim, he is Elohim, trustworthy El, guarding covenant and kindness for 1,000 generations, with those who love him, and those who guard his commands, but repaying those who hate him to their face, to destroy them. He does not delay to do so with him who hates him. He repays him to his face. And you shall guard the command, and the laws, and the right rulings which I command you today, to do them. And it shall be, because you hear these right rulings, and shall guard and do them, that Yahweh your Elohim shall guard with you the covenant and the kindness which he swore to his fathers, and shall love you, and bless you, and increase you, and shall bless the fruit of your womb, and the fruit of your land, your grain and your new wine, and your oil, the increase of your cattle, and the offspring of your flock, in the land of which he swore to your fathers to give you. Blessed are you above all peoples. There is not going to be a barren man or a barren woman among you or among your livestock. And Yahweh shall turn away from you all sickness, and put on you none of the evil diseases of Mitzrayim, which you have known. But he shall put them on all those who hate you. And you shall consume all the peoples whom Yahweh your Elohim is delivering over to you. Your eyes shall not pardon them, and you do not serve their mighty ones, for that is a snare to you. When you say in your heart, these nations are greater than I am unable to drive them out. Do not be afraid of them. Remember well that Yahweh your Elohim did to Pharaoh and to all Mitzrayim, the great trials which your eyes saw, and the signs and the wonders, the strong hand and the outstretched arm, by which Yahweh your Elohim brought you out. Yahweh your Elohim does so to all the peoples of whom you are afraid. And Yahweh your Elohim also sends the hornet among them, until those who are left, who hide themselves from you, are destroyed. Do not be afraid of them, for Yahweh your Elohim, the great and awesome El, is in your midst. And Yahweh your Elohim shall drive out these nations before you, little by little. You are not allowed to destroy them at once, lest the beasts of the field become too numerous for you. But Yahweh your Elohim shall deliver them over to you, and destroy them with great destruction, until they are consumed. And he shall give their sovereigns into your hand, and you shall destroy their name from under the heavens. No one is going to be able to stand against you until you have destroyed them. The carved images of their mighty ones you are to burn with fire. Do not covet the silver or gold that is on them, nor take it for yourselves, lest you be snared by it. For it is an abomination to Yahweh your Elohim. And do not bring an abomination into your house, lest you be accused like it. Utterly loathe it, and utterly hate it, for it is accursed. I give thanks to Yahweh according to his righteousness, and praise the name of Yahweh Most High. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. Your righteousness is righteousness forever, and your Torah is truth. Make me understand that I'm a fulfiller of your Torah, and God will my heart. Amen.
Deuteronomy 7 is one of those passages that's often used to show why we shouldn't follow the Torah, or why we shouldn't believe in Almighty. Okay, so a lot of people will point to Deuteronomy 7 and they'll say how hard and horrible Almighty is. Because of some of the things that are said in chapter 7. And I thought let's look at it and think a little bit about what's going on. So if we look in verse 1, it says that when Yahweh brings you into the land, you will clear away the nations, etc. Then in verses 2, it says, when Yahweh your Elohim gives them over to you, you shall smite them and put them under the ban completely. Make no covenant with them and show them no favor. Okay? And basically, that's the verse. So we start wipe out these people that are in the land, we must kill them all, and this is like terrible. How can a loving Almighty, do something like this and say this kind of thing? It's not acceptable, And either that's the way it used to be, and now it's different, because now we have Yeshua, who loves us all very much, and the angry Father is no longer the one we have to deal with. We can now deal with the Messiah, or we don't believe at all, or whatever view people get from this. So anyway, so let's think a little bit about it and look at it. So I've got a few points, so let's see a few scriptural concepts. First, I thought we could talk about mixing good and evil. Okay, so if we look at 1 Corinthians 15. Okay, verse 33, it says there, it says, do not be led astray. Evil company corrupts good habits. Wake up to soberness righteously and do not sin. Some do not have the knowledge of God. I speak this to your shame. Okay? Just that concept of evil company corrupts good habits. You've heard it a lot. Okay? So clearly, on a simple level, the Almighty doesn't want them to be living in the same land and to be best friends and all that type of stuff for these people. Okay? And we can then ask ourselves, like, why is it so hard with these people? Okay, so does that mean that we can have friends that don't keep the law or the Torah, or can we have secular friends, or how are we supposed to look at this whole thing? Okay, so there's a concept there and a principle of mixing good and evil, and bad company corrupts good character. We need to just look a little bit more and see what is the context of why are we destroying these people, why these people are being destroyed. Because it makes sense to understand who's all my talking. We go to verse 22, and from 22 to 26 it says there, do not rob the poor because he's poor, and do not oppress not the afflicted at the gate. For Yahweh pleads their cause and shall plunder those who plunder them. Make no friendship with one given to wrath, and do not go with a man of rage, lest you learn his ways and find yourself ensnared. Okay, so that's very interesting about learning the ways. There's also passages in the Torah that says, when you serve Yahweh, do not serve him the way that the nations serve Yahweh. So it's very, very bad for us to look at how other people serve their idols and do stuff, or how they worship, and then say, oh, that's how we should bring that in, or that makes sense, or that's really good. We shouldn't learn from them at all. Okay? They're not serving Almighty. The Bible isn't their basis. We shouldn't be at all looking at what the others do. And you see this thing of mixing good and evil. And it doesn't make sense to go out. I'm going to go out with some friends. The one guy's a big fighter. He always in fights because you're going to get into a fight and you're going to be next to him, and you're going to get sucked into the situation. So that doesn't make sense. So those are like some simple things, but now, getting back to the people who quoted these verses, by the way, which I think are good, to say, see, well, we shouldn't keep company with bad people. And I think it's valid, but in Deuteronomy, he doesn't only say don't keep company, he says you must wipe them out. So that's a little bit more excessive or harsh, than just saying these are people that I shouldn't keep company with. So the question I have then is when else has the Almighty done something similar? To what he's doing in Deuteronomy 7, where he says, smite them completely and put them under the dam. Right? Keren means wipe out, destroy them. When has he done that before? With Noah, yes, on the flood. Right? He put basically the whole world under the ban and killed everyone. Okay? When else did the Almighty do this?
That priest that would strange fire, he also not just wipe them out.
Yeah, he did wipe them out. When else did he do it to like a group of people?
Sodom and Gomorrah.
Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay? I'm sure there's more examples, but those are like some big ones. So we've got the flood, and we've got Sodom and Gomorrah. So if we look at, and then we've got three groups here now. We've got the people of Israel, and not the mighty people of Israel, the people that are living in the land of Israel right now, the Canaanites, etc., and the 7 different nations that it mentions, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, and all of those. Let's see what they did, and then let's look at what they did with Noah, and we look at Sodom as well. We'll see the kind of, what is Almighty wiping nations out. Okay, so we go to Leviticus 18. It tells us what some of the things that the people of the land did or do. We should actually read from almost all of Leviticus 18. Can someone read from verse 4 to verse 29? Yeah, 4 to 29.
Do my right rulings and guard my laws, to walk in them. I am Yahweh your Elohim, and you shall guard my laws and my right rulings, and my laws and deeds by them. I am Yahweh. No one is to approach anyone of his own flesh to uncover his nakedness. I am Yahweh. The nakedness of your father or the nakedness of your mother, you do not uncover. She is your mother. Am I reading the right thing?
Yes.
Oh, okay. The nakedness of your father or the nakedness of your mother, you do not uncover. She is your mother. You do not uncover her nakedness. The nakedness of your father's wife, you do not uncover. It is your father's nakedness. The nakedness of your sister, the daughter of your father, or the daughter of your mother, whether born at home or elsewhere, their nakedness you do not uncover. The nakedness of your son's daughter or your daughter's daughter, their nakedness you don't uncover, for theirs is your own nakedness. The nakedness of your father's wife, daughter, brought forth by your father, she is your sister, you do not uncover her nakedness. The nakedness of your father's sister, you do not uncover, she is your father's flesh. The nakedness of your mother's sister, you do not uncover, for she is your mother's flesh. The nakedness of your father's brother, you do not uncover, you do not approach his wife, she is your aunt. The nakedness of your daughter-in-law, you do not uncover, she is your son's wife, you do not uncover her nakedness. The nakedness of your brother's wife, you do not uncover, it is your brother's nakedness. The nakedness of a woman and her daughter, you do not uncover. Now do you take her son's daughter or her daughter's daughter, do not uncover her nakedness. They are her relatives. It is wickedness. And do not take a woman unrivaled to her sister to uncover her nakedness while the other is alive. And do not approach a woman to uncover her nakedness in her monthly separation and uncleanness. And do not have intercourse with the wife of your neighbor to defile yourself with her. And do not give any of your offspring to prostitute to Moloch. And do not profane the name of your Elohim. I am God. And do not lie with a maid as with a woman. It is an abomination. And do not have intercourse with any beast to defile yourself with it. When a woman does not stand before a beast to make with it, it is perversion. Do not defile yourselves with all these, for by all these nations have defiled, which I'm driving out before you. Thus the land became defiled, therefore I punished it for its wickedness, and the land vomited out its inhabitants. But you shall guard my laws in the right and not do any of these abominations, and may take no stranger and sojourns among you, because the men of the land who were before you have done all these abominations, and thus the land became defiled. So let not the land vomit you out for defiling it, as it vomited out the nations that were before you.
Thank you. Great. Quite a horrible chapter. Okay, it's not a very nice thing to read. And then you see that these are the things that the people did in the land before they went in. And the Almighty wants them to be vomited out, to be out of the land. In Leviticus 20, you don't have to read it, but I'll just highlight in Leviticus 20 from verses 9. It talks in verse 7 about setting yourself apart, right? Because Yahweh set apart, and then from verse 9 it talks again about the sins the people did in the land. In chapter 2, so Leviticus 20. In verse 9 it talks about those who pierced their parents. In verse 10 it talks about committing adultery. In verse 11 it talks about verse 11 talks about the wife of your father. Verse 12 it talks about daughter-in-law. 13 it talks about homosexuality. 14 it talks about marrying a woman and her mother. 15 it talks about intercourse with the beast. 16 it talks about the dead beast. 17 talks about his sister, his father's daughter, etc. 18 talks about when a woman's in a monthly time, you shouldn't be with her. Carries on about your uncle and brothers and family members. And in verse 23 it says, do not walk in the laws of the nations which I'm driving out before you, for they do all of these, and therefore I loathe them. Okay, so it's very interesting that it's very clear, like one of the major issues that people in the land have is they were like completely deviant in their kind of sexual views, what they did and what they tolerated. And in Leviticus 18, a lot from Leviticus 18 is about family purity and things like incest and all of that. And what's the key problem with incest? It's like the number one thing with incest. You almost line up with incest every time. And that's the deformity, that's scientific, it's a problem, right? Okay. The result, what's the key problem with incest? It's rape. Almost always. Incest is almost always rape. Because you're always going to have someone older and someone younger, right? And it's very, very bad. The law is very, very clear that you cannot have any incest, etc. Okay? And because it's almost always rape. Any incest charge will be a rape charge. So that's how we understand our law as well. And because what's the young child going to do or say, etc. Okay, so it's very clear that that's very bad, obviously. And it also talks about adultery in verse 20, and in verse 21 it talks about idolatry. It also talks about the name of the Almighty in here. It's interesting that you've got the mixture of what the people did, all these sexual things, rape, idolatry, the name of the Almighty, homosexuality, the things with animals, to summarize, it's all basically what we call deviance. Sexual deviance. Things are unacceptable. Unacceptable sexual behavior. Right? So, going on about it, I know you're not really enjoying it, but it's important for us to understand there's a people that are being dealt with, right, in the land, and the people that the Almighty doesn't want to continue living in the land anymore, what He doesn't tolerate. Okay? Any comments on that?
I find it interesting that it's listed in the book of Leviticus. This book about holiness and cleanliness and purity and all these sort of things, and like of all the books to put it in, the laws of human behavior versus, if you don't even read them, you come up with very warped sexual practices because you're not reading what it's saying and seeing what you do.
And all of these practices are very damaging. damaging to people's psyches, very damaging to relationships, to their views, to how they live. It's just messing everything up, right? And today, you know, I'm so glad that we don't live in a society like this anymore. We don't live in a society that tolerates homosexuality or that allows someone to say, I was born, you know, like in America, guys they claim it's their constitutional right to be pedophiles. They've lost their case, they keep bringing it again and again and again. Because they say that I was born like it. I was born a child molester. You know, that's just the way I am. Because I was born gay, it's acceptable. I was born not, you know, that's an argument that's now worked. So the next argument, you know, someone was born a murderer, someone was born unacceptable. So anyway, our society worldwide is actually very, very corrupt. And you see, like, these are very, very key issues from the mindset in terms of being set apart, is to look at this. And you can also look, when we look at more detail, we'll see like how our country, this country we live in, is very, very disgusting. There's a heck of a lot of stuff in South Africa that's completely unacceptable and sick. And a lot like the people that Yahweh destroys. Right? And it's all over the world, but I mean, you can see, we can talk about issues in Africa, talk about issues in Asia, talk about issues everywhere, but you know, we live here, so if you look at our country, and what people do. So, let's talk a bit about Sodom. Okay, so what do we know about Sodom? What was the sin of Sodom?
They loved animals and men, slept along with men.
Okay.
And they tried to make the angels.
Yes.
That's why they.
Okay. So there's definitely homosexuality. Sodom, because the angels came and they wanted to like do things to them. What else? What was linked to the homosexuality? Another concept as well. Right? I mean, it wasn't like, you guys mind. So not only was it homosexuality, it was also rape, really. Okay? What else? What other chapters, what other verses in the Bible we got that talk about Sodom? There's a few other ones that are linked to Sodom as well.
I think it say something about like not liking strangers or something inhospitable.
Let's talk about that somewhere.
Some verse.
Kind of like that, yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Okay, so we've got that. So in Genesis 13:13 and Genesis 19:5, it talks about the homosexuality and sexual stuff. We read a lot of times. We can go there if you want. I think we know that that was one of the major perversions of Sodom. Okay, that's where the word Sodom comes from anyway, Sodomite. In 2 Peter 2 verse 7, it talks about them being filthy. It talks about the lascivious and all the different words in different translations. But it's this word of being really filthy. 2 Peter 2:7. ISR says that God was oppressed with the indecent behavior of the lawless. Okay, so you can look at that word and how it's translated, but it's basically this filthy behavior, this disgusting behavior, which kind of lines up with a lot of the sexual stuff we're talking about. In Jude 1 verse 7, so Jude is there just before the book of Revelation. Yehuda, Jude 1:7. It says, even as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities around them in a similar way to these, having given themselves over to whoring and gone after strange flesh, are set forth as an example, undergoing judicial punishment of everlasting fire. Okay? So, you see that there's the whoring, okay, just the messing around, the sexual boundaries, etc. And then the strange flesh. Now, what that means is we're not certain. That could be something to do with beasts or animals. But it could also just be things like homosexuality. Because when the Torah uses the word strange, it often talks about strange to the situation. So when it talks about a temple, it says, let no stranger come near. Okay, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not an Israeli. So it talks about the Levites and them as God, the part of the temple, and no stranger must come near. That means anybody that's strange to the situation. So this concept of strange, so it could be strange, which means not the right, so foreign flesh, or something like that. So it could include different things. So anyway, that just backs that up. What else does it say that they did in Sodom? In different books? In the book of Ezekiel. So the book of Ezekiel 16, verse 49. 1849. Says that this was the crookedness of your sister Sodom. She and her daughter had pride, sufficiency of bread and unconcerned ease, and she did not help the poor and the needy. And they were haughty and did abomination before me, and I took them away when I saw it. So you've got here this thing of they were depending on your translation, pride, they were arrogant, right? They had fullness of food, depending on your translation, right? So they had stuff, they had food, they had things that they needed, and unconcerned ease, right? So they were, some translations say they were lazy, some say abundance of idleness, okay? So they had food, they were arrogant, and they were just relaxed, or at ease, or lazy, whatever you want to say, okay? You know, and then the point is that they did not help the poor and the needy. And there it talks about it's something that's got something to do with the hand. In Hebrew, so it talks there, the word there for the poor, I didn't write it down now, but it's the humble, the afflicted, and the poor. So they've got food, but they're arrogant and lazy, and they don't help the poor. They've got the power to help the poor, they don't help the poor. They don't reach out, because they've got abundance of ease, right? They're either too lazy to help the poor, or they're too arrogant to help the poor, whatever the issue is, but they don't care. Okay? That for me is very sad, because that makes me think of South Africa a lot. In the next verse, then it says they were haughty and did abominations. And then to continue, they were haughty, right? So, you know, they were arrogant and they did just abomination. Now the word here for abomination is to'eba, okay? And it's the same word we use in Leviticus 18:22, which is the word used for homosexuals. But it's used in more than that context. It's also used for idolatry. When you commit idolatry, it's an abomination. If you offer your children to idols, it's an abomination. Certain types of food are an abomination, and a lot of the sexual sins are abominations. So there is abomination. So we don't know which one it was, but it was abomination before Almighty. In Isaiah 3 verse 9, it also talks about Sodom. And it says that the look on their faces witnesses against them, and they declare their sin as Sodom. They do not hide it. What should they be, for they have brought evil upon themselves? So there's like one of the ultimate things that they did. They were so arrogant that they weren't even sorry. They didn't even hide their sin. They didn't even pretend it was bad. So they just put it out there. So they did not even try and hide their sin. You know, like most people, when they do something that they know is wrong, they try and hide it. But if you get so evil, you don't even try and hide it. You know, that's really, really bad. So that's Sodom, right? All the sexual things, the fact that they didn't care about the poor and help them, and they were so arrogant that they didn't even hide it. It was right out there in the open, and everyone was like, okay, that's just how it is, you know, and no one does anything about it. It's okay. And you can think about, like, there's lots of places in the world that are like that. So, you know, there's lots of analogies to South Africa and other places, not just here. So it's very sobering to see and to realize that, like, we don't always take stock of, like, how evil the world is around us, and how unacceptable it is, the way that people actually behave. Okay, so Noah, in Genesis 6, we then have the flood. Any other comments on that, guys?
So I think, I can't remember where exactly, but it says in the latter days that the sinner's conscience which is seared is a hot iron, a block of hot iron. So I think this might be like the mark that you can see that they don't care anymore what right and wrong is. They don't actually know what right and wrong is. That is the mark, the burn mark, the seared.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting is on a lot of these different concepts is that I often think of it as animalistic. Because, you know, like, I know it sounds funny, but you see what I mean. So dogs don't have, you know, they don't get married. Dog will mate with anything, you know, and they're not embarrassed. Right? And it's fine because they're dogs. Right? But we're not animals. Nobody wants to be above that level. So we're not like dogs that go and just do all these different things. You know, and a dog doesn't have to be embarrassed, but if we get to a place where we're just animals and everything we're doing, we're not even embarrassed about doing what we're doing. You know, if you think about it, it's just like the deep concept of us, we're not supposed to be animals. We're not supposed to act like animals or be animals. We're not supposed to say, this is just how I feel right now, I feel like this, or I was born like that, or whatever. We're supposed to rise up above that level. We need to raise ourselves above this like level of flesh, if you want to call it.
I also think that's kind of what I think is sort of a dichotomy within like a humanistic / evolutionary worldview is, you know, if you're going to run with that, then you have to say we are nothing more than animals. But you know, I think most people that take that stance will also, you know, be very much against somebody, you know, abusing them or abusing their children or raping their children. So it's kind of a false dichotomy.
Yeah, agree, totally. It's senseless. It doesn't mean it's illogical. With yourself and those who care for you, you want a certain standard, but for those and everyone else, you just think that we're animals. So, I don't actually believe that anyone really believes that they're animals. Because if they really thought about it, you know, then they should be happy for people to treat them like animals. I mean, then there should be no issue with that. But no one wants to be treated like an animal. Okay, with Noah, we look at Noah. In Genesis 6, right? How it starts off, what's interesting is the introduction to the thing of Noah, is that it says that the sons of Elohim saw the daughters of men and that they were good, and they took wives from them. And so, if we look at Jude, where we were just now, Jude 1, we were there actually just now, so we've got something on this. It says in verse 6, the messengers did not keep to their own principality, but left their dwelling, their own dwelling. He has kept them in everlasting shackles under darkness for the judgment of the great day. So, you can see that the angels were not meant to come down. It was not supposed to happen. It wasn't right for them to come down as the daughters of men. They were supposed to stay in their own domain. This is not the line they're supposed to cross. Right? And for me, that links us to this thing of adultery. So a lot of times, you know, adultery really is actually, when people say, if you've heard the saying that helps to understand it, it says, wow, that's the most amazing car I've ever driven. I've actually seen, I remember Jeremy Clarkson on Top Gear or whatever, he's driving his car, and that is like 1,000 horsepower of unadulterated power. Okay, and the word adultery means mix. So unadulterated power means pure power. You know, so when we read the word adultery, people always only think of one type of mix. And yes, there is the primary one, which is like someone that's married, a woman that's married, which you can't commit adultery. But yeah, this is also like an illegal mix. They weren't supposed to come down and be with the daughters of men. And in the same way, men are not supposed to mix with animals. In the same way, men are not supposed to be with men. All of this stuff is like this form of illegal mixes that are not supposed to take place. In any case, what I find interesting is that this whole story of the flood starts with an illegal mix. It starts with the angels coming down. And I think it's an important thing to bear in mind. We'll look at that in a few seconds. In verses 5 of Genesis 6, the Almighty actually says that it says, Yahweh saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. So there's lots of differences in translation because they're trying to translate some concepts in that verse. But at the end of the day, the word there that says that was wickedness, it's Ravah Ra'ot, which is great evil, or much evil. Much evil in man, okay? And that every inclination of the thoughts of his heart. Right? So there you've got evil imaginations. The word can also be used for cunning. So the cunning of his heart. You know, and it was only evil continually. So the only evil continually there, it's actually Yom, called Yom or something like that. So it's all day. You know, so you know, another way of looking at it is like all day long, the thoughts are just evil. You know, all the time, just like what can I do? Being planning evil, cunningly, thinking about bad things. So it's not interesting. It's not just that the actions were evil. It's that all the time they were just thinking of evil. They were just thinking what they could do. You know, and I think it's a very interesting concept because, you know, like nowadays, you're not left alone to think. Okay, so if you take somebody that's pure and they come home and they just watch TV all day, they're going to see lots of bad things. Okay, then they drive in the car and there's radio, and then there's going to be nonsense on the radio. There's going to be songs about rapper songs, and all this disgusting songs about all kinds of things, you know. And then, who knows what, they're going to, I'm just saying, the whole entertainment world and everything is just continuously bombarding us with more and more evil. So all the time, you're just taking it in. You know, so you think of more and more evil all the time. So that worries me in terms of where society is going. But in any case, what is the point of this whole thingy is that how did a lot of this evil start? It starts with the boundaries that are relaxed. Boundaries that should be in place that get relaxed. So, you know, in the flood, the way it's introduced is that they saw the daughters of women were pretty, they were good, and the angels came, and there was a sexual thing that shouldn't take place. If we go to Numbers, the book of Numbers 25, we have it when Balaam wants to curse, excuse me, Balaam wants to curse the children of Israel because Balak, the king of Moab, has said to him, come and curse the children of Israel. Right? And he says, and then you basically can't curse them because, you know, the children of Israel are currently, they're righteous. They're dwelling in their tents, and it's not Yahweh's will for them to be cursed. Right? And so, you know, when we read the whole story and we look at the different portions, Revelations 2 and Exodus 34, lots of different places about it, we see that Balaam told the king how to make the children of Israel get into trouble, basically. Right? He told them to put a stumbling block. He taught them to put a stumbling block before them so they would sin. And so what does he use to make them sin in Numbers 25? How does he start the process of sin? Right? Yes. So he sends the woman in. sends the ladies in. Right? Now it's not a woman thing. He sends the ladies in, you know, to start this process. So the women are going to go in and they're going to invite them. The slaughtering, and they start to sleep around. It starts with the sexual stuff. It starts with the women that are now being all sexual, etc., and they lead the men to the, and then they start going to the slaughterings, they commit idolatry. So you read it here, Israel dwelt in Shittim, and the people began to war with the daughters of Moab, and they invited the people to the slaughterings of their mighty ones, and the people ate and bowed down to their mighty ones. Thus Israel was joined to Baal Peor, and the displeasure of Yahweh came against Israel. Right? And the Almighty plagues the people, and people are dying, and there's like all these people getting wiped out. You know, and so we can see that like the evil started here with the people that couldn't be cursed in the previous chapter. They couldn't be cursed, there was nothing that could be done against them. Right? But when they started this evil thing and they started to go down, all of a sudden the Almighty himself then now sends a plague. So the Almighty himself curses the people in a way. And has to punish them for what they've done. And that starts with this sexual thing. So if we look at Sodom, before the Almighty destroys Sodom, they've done all the evil. It says a cry has come up before me of Sodom, and he sends the messengers down. Right? What is it that, what's the turning point in Sodom? What happens? The messengers go into the city, they meet Lot, they say, no, we feel like staying outside in the courtyard. Lot says, come to my house. No, we feel like staying outside in the courtyard. It says, and Lot pressed them, and forcefully said to them, come to my house. Right? Why? Why did they not stay in the square? Why did strangers not walk around Sodom?
So they would get raped.
They would get abused, they would get, molested or whatever. So they go and then immediately the people come to Lot's house to do the thing. And it starts again. There was a final thing, it was like this deviance that the people had. So getting back to, away from all of this talk, getting back to Deuteronomy 7, just to get a little bit more of a concept of like what was going on when the Almighty said to them, He wants them to destroy the people of the land. So, we saw in Leviticus 18 and Leviticus 20, it says the land vomits out the people that have done all of these abominations. Okay? And in Deuteronomy 7, the Almighty says you must smite them and put them under the ban completely. You make no covenant with them and show them no favor. Okay, because they're at this place where they're just, you know, it's too bad. It's too disgusting. It's at a place where it's so past acceptable. Nobody wants to wipe them up. So it just gives us an idea of things that are really unacceptable. We really need to look and guard the sexual side of society. It's a very important aspect of society to guard that. We really need to look at our view on other people. You know, having people with lots of money, lots of power to help and not helping. That's not acceptable. That's one of the sins of Sodom, is that they could have helped people and they could have done things and they didn't. Right? We've got lots of people right now, for example, either in government or rich people, etc., they could do things and they don't. They don't care. That's very bad. That's very, very bad. Also being so arrogant not to hide sin. You know? So it would be really bad if we're not even trying to. I mean, not that sin is good or acceptable, but when you get to a place where people don't even try and hide the sin anymore, right? Where it's openly done, you know, that would be really bad. In any case, so this is why the Almighty destroys the people, wants to destroy the people, and this is why He destroyed, for these type of reasons, He destroyed the people with the flood. And that's why Solomon was destroyed, and that's why they went to that visual. These terrible things were being done, right? And the problem with it is that it's easy for this to be a starting point for decay in society. Right? It's easy. In any case, any other comments on that? Any other comments on that? Okay. So then coming back to the principle of not mixing good and evil, Corinthians says, do not mix bad company corrupts good character. And Proverbs talks about, do not make friends with a hot-tempered man or associate with one easily angered. You may learn your ways and get ensnared. So we do have this concept of not mixing, but that doesn't necessarily mean there's someone at work I'm having a conversation with and he's maybe not a believer and I'm chatting to him and I'm being kind to him. It doesn't mean I can't have lunch with him or try and meet his friend, etc. You know, but it does mean there's a line which is unacceptable to spend time with certain types of people. But
otherwise, you'd have a kind of a problem because you also on one hand have to be alive for the nation.
Yes.
So you can't really take someone extremely that you, or if you're not mixing with anybody who's not a believer, then you can't be alive. But on the same token, I suppose if you're mixing with really evil people, then this becomes an issue.
Yes. Right, you can also read what Corinthians, Paul talks about like how we judge inside the community, in Corinthians 5, and how we judge outside the community. And inside the community we need to be very strong in these type of things and not accept any other stuff of behavior at all. And if someone does anything like this, you need to put them out. You know, kick them out. And if they repent, then they can come back and they can be in the community. We cannot tolerate that in our midst as a community. The people that are outside the community, we can be a bit more lenient with because they haven't bound themselves to live like this or to be part of what we do. That's what Paul says on Corinthians 5. But nonetheless, it's still a very strong line. And we need to make sure that we don't become part of that. And I'm just talking about this, you see some other things that come out in this chapter now is that it's very key in Deuteronomy 7 that we destroy the people of the land. So if we go back to the portion today, verse 2, they must destroy the people. In verse 3, do not marry them. Do not intermarry with them. Okay? So where's mine? So that's also very important, and that links to the same concept. Okay, so, you know, why does it say, it says we should destroy them, and then we said we shouldn't marry them? Why does it say we shouldn't marry them when we're supposed to destroy them?
You don't destroy them straight away, so you're going to have people in the borders coming to your street in town.
Yes, exactly. Well done, that's awesome. If we read the whole thing carefully, you'll see that it says later on, in verse 22, we'll drive them out little by little. You're not allowed to destroy them at once, lest the beasts of the field become numerous. So a lot of times, even when the mighty is doing something good, and that's a very important lesson for us all. If the mighty does something good, he doesn't always do it on this gigantic scale straight away. So we often think that like, okay, I'm doing the right thing for the Almighty, I'm doing this great thing. Now I want to see this like atom bomb go off. This like huge, massive thing is going to happen. Everything's going to happen, you know, etc. And the Almighty actually he works like a snowball effect. You know, the snowball builds up, and it gets bigger and gets bigger and gets bigger. And you know, so he didn't even when they went to the land to say, okay, you know, I'm just going to wipe them out, one shot, one big battle, they'll be wiped out. You know, actually they go into the land and slowly and surely they're taking the city and they're taking an area and they're conquering it, etc. There's lots and lots of reasons for it. So the one reason given here is into the beast of the field. Because you know, why is the beast of the field given as a reason?
Because if there's no one, everyone's not wiped out, it's not going to be tended to, it's not going to become home for the beasts of the field.
There was, especially a long time ago, they said there was lots more forests in Israel, and there was a lot more there than there is today. And there were lions, there were lots of lions, all kinds of beasts, there were bears in the land. And what happens when you kill a whole lot of people in one shot? You know, if you killed everyone in the land in one big shot, what's going to happen to the body? It's going to be everywhere, right? And he's going to have like all the animals coming in. You know what happens when a lion eats a person? You heard of the, you know the stories of the lions in Africa? What do they call them? The man-eaters, or whatever they call them? Have you read those books when they get like a special hunter that comes? You know, there's like you know, you got this one little books that you like to read, usually like Wilbur Smith type books and all of that, right? This is true. So like when they built the railway lines in India, or when they did stuff, etc., they would build a railway line, the lion would come, it's never killed someone before, and it would scare everyone, etc., and then someone would get killed by the lion after a while. But it wouldn't just hunting the people initially. And then as soon as it kills that person, it's eaten one person. It's the taste of manfish. And as soon as it gets that taste, I don't know, they speculate that our blood is sweet compared to other animals, or our skin is, or our flesh is soft, whatever it is, the lion will no longer eat anything but people. From that point onwards, the lion will only eat people. And then that lion will start killing, and it will just go crazy. And so, like, then they get like the special hunter, and they pay all this money, there's like wolves around, guy will come, you know, and they will hunt this guy down, this lion down. They've got to find that lion, and they've got to kill that lion. Because other lions are still fine. They're still, maybe they get you, they'll kill you, etc. But if they don't eat you, it's fine. That's when they want you. So, you kill all these people, the lions eat the flesh, and then all those animals will hunt people from then on. It's an interesting thing, we don't know nothing about the world anymore. So we're so like modernized, so-called modernized. So anyway, so that's a very good reason, because the animals would cause chaos. You know, you'd have lions all the time, all that kind of stuff. And you spend half the time now trying to stay safe from the animals and dealing with this influx of animals. That's one reason, and also because you need to manage the land. You know, you don't just become Moses overnight. Right? When Moses wanted to lead the people, he saw a fight. He said, you know, his heart was reaching out to his people. He saw Egyptian and an Israeli fighting, and then first thing, okay, I need to get in there. You know, he got involved, and there was obviously like punches or whatever happened, and he killed the guy. And he had to flee from Pharaoh. Right? So his management style wasn't the right style to deal with leading the children of Israel, because he ended up killing somebody. So that wasn't really the right approach to take. And he had to spend 40 years in the wilderness, you know, learning from his father-in-law. He seems to be a very wise man, and you know, tending sheep and all that. Seems to be a great lesson to be learned from tending sheep. You know, obviously a lot of life lessons we can learn from that type of thing. And, you know, living that type of life, and then he was ready to come back. So the same way, like learning to manage the land of Israel, they were given little bits of it, so they learned how the land works and how to manage it. So you know, the same thing when you start a business. You think that they're like, wow, it's going to be fantastic, and the whole big thing is going to happen, and you have to like employ slowly one extra person, and you learn, oh wait, I need to learn about this, oh I need to deal with tax, you learn about all the different aspects, and so you grow in that, and the money can give you more, you know, as you kind of entrust it, and you deal wisely with it. Right.
Interesting, I don't want to be careful how to say it, but there's almost a case to say that there needs to be a certain population density in order to spread out. You can't have, you know, 3 million people saying, you know, land visual, and you've got population density of like 3 people for 10 acres of land.
Maybe. I mean, could be. I don't know. You know, it's difficult to manage with 3 people. I think there's stories about human people, like lots of people. And I think everyone in the world today is like, oh, it's bad that we have lots of people living together. And I think it's only bad that we have high density because no one cares. There'll be nothing wrong with like lots of people living very close together if people care about each other. You know, high density is only a problem because no one cares. You know, and because people now don't want to be harmed and do this, everyone wants to be like chasing the money and whatever they think they're chasing the money, you know. So, yeah, I don't have an issue with density, personally.
No, I'm just thinking, because if you think about like wide open land, it's very difficult to manage, because you have to like go on horseback for 3 days to get to the next camp.
Yeah, that would be very difficult to manage, really. Yeah. That's why you have lots of kids. Like, how do you manage that? Okay, so that was just verse 3, so we do not intermarry because we didn't just wipe them out, so they can still be around. It's a process, right? So in the process, and what's also interesting is that do not give them to your children, your daughter and the son, etc. So that means that this can take quite a few years. You can be having kids, they can reach the age. So it's important for us to think about that when they got the land, it wasn't just like that. Right? So I decide I want to serve the Almighty, I want to follow His ways. It's not just like this. Right? You make the decision, yes. There's a covenant point, there's a decision point, but then there's a long walk and growth that takes place at that point. And there's a process, and your children are involved in this process, and we need to guide our children and all that. Okay. Break down the altars, and in verse 6 we set apart to the Almighty. I think that's very important. We have to be separate from that. Right? And it's important, this is a concept, by the way, of marriage, because not marriage, it's where concepts come like in the New Testament or second writings, do not be unequally yoked, etc. Right? We can't give our children in marriage to non-believers or to people that are doing these practices. You know, so even if someone says I'm a believer but he doesn't have these things, it's unacceptable. And that's also why you'll see that, like, if you look at these things, you write a lot of these things down. So what Sodom did, what the people in the land of Israel did, the flood, the things from the flood, put that together, and you go to the New Testament, you'll see Paul says the kingdom of heaven is not inherited by. And one of those points are these things, you know, like fornicators, this, that, because the Almighty wipes those people out, not regularly, but more than once. So, you know, it's not compatible with the Almighty's way. Okay, let's carry on. I think there's some more really fascinating concepts. You guys want to say anything else before we move to something else?
That's cool. Doesn't say anything about races. You're not supposed to give your son to another race. Yes. It's someone who does not do and live like the Almighty wants him to live. Because I've had this discussion with pastors who says this.
You know, it's amazing, the Bible is actually very specific about what's not allowed. Very specific. It's actually not allowed. All this type of incense not allowed. Like, God is very specific about all these things, gives us all these things, even tells us not to be with animals. You know, which you would think is like taken for granted, but it apparently isn't. And it says nothing about colour, race, and creed. It doesn't say, you know, someone from France can't be with someone from Germany. You know, it doesn't say you speak different languages. You know, it doesn't talk about colour, nothing. You know, etc. And I personally feel the example with Moses and his wife.
Yeah.
I think that was actually a colour issue because she's a Cushite, and with the Proverbs say Cushite change her colour. And then people say, oh, well, she was a Nubian, or she was Cushite. And I say, oh, no, it's not about that. You know, it's because of some other reason, which, you know, it doesn't work, because the punishment was that she was made white as snow. You know, and Cushite is dark. You know, so come on, you know, anyway. So it doesn't say that at all. It's about belief in the Almighty. Now what's also very important is that what's also embedded in this is something important about genes. Okay? Genealogy, right? So you are scientifically, what's the right word to use? Scientifically, what's the right word? Maybe like from your parents, what do you call that? Biological, sorry, thank you. Biological, right? There's also something important about biological here, because it's interesting that he says there that when you do them, I thought it was in this passage. I'm not sure if it's in this passage, but it says that when you do what they do, then the Almighty will destroy you. Okay? And it's important that it's not just about biology. So it's not just that these are the chosen people of the Almighty, They are biologically descended from Judah and from whoever, Abraham and Isaac, whatever it is. You know, if they do the same things that the nations do, then the might will do it to you as well. And I think that's a very important concept. So they're not protected. There's no protection from biological ancestry. There's no protection because I'm a Jew. There's no protection because etc. So you can see that the key issue is the behavior. So that's the key issue in terms of the evil might change. Verse 7, I think there's an important point for us in verse 7. If you guys know what I mean there. Deuteronomy 7:7. Yep.
Now I had this told to me before. Are you going to believe the small little group while the rest of the world does this? So,
it's a good point. Exactly. So I mean 7:7, it doesn't say that like don't think you're the greatest. I mean a lot of people think, oh yeah, I mustn't think I'm the greatest. Maybe I'm kind of in the middle. You know, maybe I'm like second. I'm not first, but maybe I'm second. You know. That's not how Almighty words at all. The way it's worded is that you are the least. You are the last. You are the end of the line, right? So, you know, so Israel was the weakest, the least, right? It's not even the middle. You know, it's not second place. It's not second last. It's last. It's like you are the weakest, right? So I think it's an important concept that's reiterated. If you look at verse 1, it says that there are 7 nations greater and mightier than you. Okay, so the nations that you must get rid of, they are better than you. They're greater. Right? So, mightier there with strength and greater there with potentially numbers and all kinds of different connotations. So I think that's very interesting and very important for us to remember. That we're not great at all. We're pretty useless. Israel is pretty useless, but there's a message to that, yes, right?
The one passage you also read about Sodom also mentioned their pride.
Yes, pride.
So that's not
Good point. Very good point. So I think a lot of times as well that you kind of feel that now I've found the truth. Now I can keep the Torah. Now this. You know, and we think now I'm actually mightier. I'm not greater. You know, mightier than the people around me. You know. But it's like, you know, it's like there's an important thing. It's like there's always somebody better than you. I'm trying to remember how that phrase goes. No matter how good you think you are, there's always somebody better. You know. No matter if you think that you have the most money, trust me, someone's got more money. If you think you have the best car, someone's got a better car. If you think you're the fastest, someone's faster. Whatever you are, there's always someone better than you. You know. And no matter what you think you know the Bible the most, someone else is better than you. You know, you think you have the best argument, someone's got a better argument than you. You know, it's how it is. It's a very important concept for us to know that we're not great at all. We're not great at all. And the key then is verse 8. Okay, and I think a lot of times people don't always focus on the second part of verse 8. There's actually 2 different concepts in verse 8. So the one concept there is because he guards the covenant, the oath with the fathers. Okay, so Yahweh is true. He's true to the covenant. And he made a covenant with Abraham that his descendants were going to get the land. And at some point in time, they will get the land. Yeah. The other point of it is that because Yahweh loves you, because of Yahweh loving you, he loves the people. And I think that's often underplayed. You know, so it's not only because of the covenant, it's also because he loves. Because he loves the people. Right? And he wants them. He wants them to be better. He wants to show them. He wants to bless them. He wants you to do what's right. And so the reason that they can take the land, if you go down there, where it says in verses 17, it links to verse 17. So remember, you're the weakest. You link it to verse 17. It says that when you say in your heart, these nations are greater than I am unable to drive them out. So when you say in your heart, you're a little community, what can we bring you? Or it's just me, what's the difference do I make? Or whatever it is, or I'm not good enough to do this. You know? But do not be afraid of them. Remember what Yahweh your Elohim did to Pharaoh and to all the tribe. And the great trials which your eyes saw, the signs and the wonders, the strong hand and the outstretched arm, by which Yahweh your Elohim brought you out. Yahweh your Elohim does that to all the people of whom you are afraid. Okay? Going down, verse 21, do not be afraid of them, for Yahweh your Elohim, the great and awesome mouth, is in your midst. Right? And Yahweh will drive out this nation before you, little by little. Okay? So the whole point there is that the Almighty is the one that makes the difference. And that's obviously a very simple message, but it's fantastic that it's here in the Torah. You know, so the difference that we have, what is our secret weapon? You know, our secret weapon is the Almighty. Okay, so we can do great things only because of it. And without it, we are useless. And it's a very direct and very strong message. Right? They cannot take the land, they cannot have the land. We cannot conquer when we can't do anything. There's always going to be someone better than us. So whatever we think we can do, there's always somebody better than us. And the difference that we have is that the Almighty is there. And it's very important that we always remember that. And that is, you know, there's another passage where it says that Yahweh is the one that gives you the power to get wealth. You know, and it's so easy to try and abuse that one. And it's somewhere in chapter 8, the next chapter, Deuteronomy 8:18. It actually says in verse 17, when you say in your heart, my power and the strength of my hand have made for me this wealth. So you've now conquered the land, beaten the guys, I'm the best, you know, I'm great. But you should remember Yahweh your Elohim, for it is He who gives you power to get wealth, in order to establish His covenant, which is swore to your fathers as it is today. And I know the concept there is about wealth and about going into the land, but I believe that we can apply the principle, you know, also quite generally. That it's Yahweh that gives us the power to succeed. It's the one that gives us the power to do things. You know, and when we think we're great, you know, the only reason we're here today is because the Almighty gave us power. He gave us the opportunity. He was the one that, you know, was helping us, etc. And that's a really, really important message. So it's good to think of ourselves as little and weak, and to be really humble about ourselves. But it's also important to understand that, to know that with Yahweh, we are not weak. And that's a very important message to know that we are not weak.
Just as long as we do what He expects from us, then He's actually.
Yeah, and to love Him, because I sometimes think that I agree with exactly what you're saying. We must do what He says and obey the one, but also we also just must love Him.
How do you love someone if you don't do what they ask you? If you don't like doing what they ask you?
That's true. Okay, so if we go to verses 9. So the point of verse 9, it says, you shall know that Yahweh Elohim, He is Elohim, and the trustworthy El, God in covenants and kindness for 1,000 generations with those who love Him, and those who guard His commands. Okay, so loving and guarding His commands, but repaying those who hate Him to their face, to destroy them. He does not delay to do so to him who hates Him, He repays him to his face. Where do you remember that from? Yes, the 10 statements, 10 words. Yeah, well, commonly the 10 commandments. So there's quite a lot of places to study the Bible where you'll see that lots of sections of the 10 words are repeated. Lots and lots of places. So the 10 commands or whatever are scattered all the way through the Bible. You know, and so again, like we said last time, was that the 10 words don't only appear in Exodus 20 because you're missing stuff if you don't read Deuteronomy 5 with it. Right? And there's lots of places where they seem to repeat it all over the scripture. So it's difficult to kind of just start cutting out sections. So, oh, it's only this section. Because the 10 commands are all over the show. Okay. Verse 13. Okay, Yahweh is the one that can bless us. The fruit of your hand, the fruit of your womb, the fruit of your land. Right? He's the one that can give us the blessing. And we spoke about verse 17 where Yahweh is the one that's with us to drive His nations out. The other thing I just want to point out is that an interesting passage that links to this is 1 Corinthians 1. In 1 Corinthians 1, it says something very interesting. And I think it should be understood in light of what the Torah is saying. verse 25. It says there, 1 Corinthians 1:25, it says, for the foolishness of Elohim is wiser than men, and the weakness of Elohim is stronger than men. Okay? But look at your brothers, that there were not many wise according to the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble. But Elohim has chosen the foolish of the world to put to shame the wise. And Elohim has chosen the weak of the world to put to shame the strong. And Elohim has chosen the lowborn of the world and the despised and the ones that are not, that he might bring to nothing the ones that are, so that no flesh should boast in his presence. So, and of him you are in Messiah Yeshua, who became for us wisdom from Elohim, righteousness also, and set apartness and redemption, that as it has been written, he who boasts, let him boast in Yahweh. So I think that's a very similar message in verse 25. The foolishness of Elohim is wiser than that of men. Sometimes people they think that means that the word of Almighty is foolish, or that it's sometimes silly, and that you're going to do something and it's not wise. Some people have interpreted it like that. That's not what it's saying. It's saying that, you know, even the thing that's the most foolish, inverted commas, of the Almighty is still that much greater than the most wise thing of men. You know, so it's like the lowest thing of the Almighty is still greater than the highest thing of man. That's what it's trying to say. And the weakness of Elohim is stronger than men. I think it's a very interesting passage, and something for us to keep in mind. I've got one last one. I don't know if you guys have anything else to comment on. I feel like in 7 verse 26. Verse 25 says, the carved images of the mighty ones burn with fire, do not cover the silver or gold on them, do not take it for yourselves, lest you be snared by it. It is an abomination to Yahweh. Okay? Do not bring an abomination into your house, lest you be accursed like it. Utterly loathed and utterly hated, for it is accursed. It is banned. So there's a message here at the end of this chapter as well, that, you know, we need to be careful what we let in. In the same way that you're destroying the nation slowly and slowly, trying to children, marrying them, you need to destroy all their idols and all that stuff. You know, what you let into your house is actually very important. And what are we bringing into our house? Because before you know it, it becomes a snare. Right? And what is a snare? Trap. So what is a trap or snare? Gareth was saying.
It's hidden, you know, it's very subtle. You don't see it.
So a trap is not always deliberate. You don't deliberately walk into a trap. No one deliberately walks into an ambush. And no one deliberately steps in a trap. Right? So the trap is there, it's concealed to look like it's not there. But it's actually there. And so we must be careful about, like, something that can be a snare. That can actually lead you away from Almighty. Things that can lead you astray. So we need to be very careful about what we bring into our homes. And, you know, there's a big concept about your house. You know, in Hebrew thinking, you know, your home is where you stay, it's where your family is, it's where you all are. You know, you need to putting the mezuzahs on the doors of the house. People know the rules of the house, and how we operate in the house. It can be possibly a spiritual element to that as well. And what we bring into the house, we must be very careful, because it can infect us. Lest you be a curse like it. Right? It's the same as we said in the beginning, like we said in Corinthians, etc., where it says that do not bad company corrupts good character. We bring things into our house that shouldn't be there. That's a really nice statue of this. Maybe that's a good idea to have in our house. That's maybe an extreme example. You know, we want to be careful. You know, what posters or pictures, what kind of things we bring.
Also, the internet can also bring some really bad stuff into your house.
Yeah. Internet is very dangerous. You may not even know it's in your house.
And the television.
TV is evil. Just out of interest, there was yesterday I picked up, I have a gym book written by someone on how to gym, Body for Life thing, you know, and she opened it up last night, and now on the page, if you open it up, it's got all these pictures of different people, before and afters. So it's got like the guy standing like this, and he's all like, and afterwards he's standing like this, you know what I'm talking about. It's got like hundreds of these pictures, but then, you know, I've never thought about the book, I haven't read it for years, I should probably read it, but, you know, but she said to me like, what are these people wearing? How are they dressed? You know? And I opened it up and looked at it, and then ladies are standing there wearing like bikinis and all that kind of stuff, etc. You know, like this and like that. And they're saying, well, why do you have a book? Why does they have a book with like people dressed like this? You know, and I realized that's like, you know, so that's a snare. That's a trap. You know, because our children looking at that, I mean, what message does that give? It gives you a message of like, they can dress like that and it's okay. It's so important to look at how you look. And, you know, it's so important that you look this right way, and you know, it's actually so dangerous. You know, lots of these type of thoughts in it, etc. So it starts there. A trap starts small, gets big. So in any case, that's what I experience. Any other thoughts on this? Cool. Just the last thought is like within the community, somebody comes here and they are gay or whatever like that, they're all welcome to come and see what it's about. And to be for us to talk to them and to tell them like, you know, they need to. Otherwise, how can, like Shua says, the sick need the doctor, right? So how can you actually deal with it? But if they decide this is where they want to be and they want to stay here, they can't continue. So they can't be part of the community and continue in that way. They need to, they want to be part of the community. It's fundamental that we are going to obey Yahweh, we're going to do what He says. You know, and many of these things are specifically bad. You know, theft is bad. A lot of the things are very bad. The things we spoke about today are things that lead you completely away from the Almighty, and that's why they're so dangerous. Yahweh destroys nations for it. We can't have that. You know. Okay. Thanks, guys. Shabbat Shalom. Should we?